Why is it, you ask, that they are walking away now? Perhaps the better question is, why did they ever walk with you to begin with? My dear listener, understand this: the architect of the universe never draws a line without meaning. The designer of your soul never allows subtraction without preparing for holy multiplication. Before this month folds itself into memory, 2 souls will step out of your life, and know it is not random. It is not bad luck, it is not betrayal, it is divine strategy, and this is not the moment to mourn. This is the moment to awaken, the celestial reason behind earthly departures in every season. Heaven works silently, and though we cry for peace, for purpose, for healing, we do not always recognize the tools God uses to deliver those gifts. Sometimes the gift comes wrapped in departure. Sometimes God answers your midnight prayers not by giving you more people, but by taking the wrong ones away. He removes them not out of wrath, but from a place of eternal love. You may call it coincidence. Heaven calls it surgery. The vine must be pruned. Do you recall the gardener in the parables? He does not prune the branches he despises, he cuts the ones he desires to bear more fruit. And so it is with you. God prunes not to punish, but to prepare. He trims your circle to strengthen your calling. He silences some voices to amplify his own. And just before May ends, 2 names, perhaps ones you've held tightly, perhaps ones you feared losing, will quietly fade. Don't chase after them. Don't beg. Don't curse the silence. Stand still, be still, trust, for what God removes, he replaces with purpose. The fire is holy, not harmful. The pain you feel is real, but so is the purpose. The loss you feel is heavy, but so is the hand that still holds you. When people vanish, your faith is tested. When attachments dissolve, the soul wavers. But let it be said of you, even when all walked away, I remained with the one who never leaves. This is your moment not to ask why they left, but why God allowed it, and the answer lies not in them but in you. God is rebuilding you on rock, not sand. You have leaned on people who were never your foundation. You have trusted voices that were never your shepherds, and you've loved some who were never meant to stay. But now, the great builder is laying stone upon stone, crafting a soul that does not crumble when others leave. You are being rooted in the eternal, and nothing eternal is ever lost. Heaven's silence is still sovereign. Do not mistake the silence for absence. When the door closes and no one knocks again, he is still near. When the call goes unanswered and the familiar names grow distant, he is closer than your breath. God is not late. God is not passive. God is working in the unseen, writing chapters that can only begin after these 2 characters exit the page. There are moments in life when certain individuals begin to fade from our story. Sometimes it happens slowly, a silence that grows wider with time. Other times it's abrupt, a sudden argument, betrayal, or vanishing without explanation. In the heat of that moment, the human heart cries out for answers. Why did they leave? What did I do wrong? But the question is not one of fault, it is one of faith, because in the divine narrative of your life, separation is never accidental. It is designed, deliberate, and merciful. You see, God sees what you cannot. He discerns the motives hidden behind smiles, the spirits behind friendships, and the consequences behind continued association. Where we see companionship, he may see contamination. Where we see loyalty, he may see limitation. So in his infinite mercy he removes, not because he is harsh, but because he is holy, and his holiness cannot allow certain spirits to cling to you when your calling is ascending. It is written that light has no fellowship with darkness, but sometimes the darkness comes not as a shadow, but as a shade, something cool, comforting, and familiar. And so God, in his grace, steps in and tears away what we would never have let go on our own. That tearing feels like heartbreak, that distance feels like punishment, but it is, in truth, the protection of your destiny. Consider the story of Abraham. He was promised greatness, Yet before the fulfillment could come, Lot had to depart. It was only after Lot separated from him that God revealed the full extent of the promise. There are lots in your life, people who are not bad, but not destined. They are not enemies, but they are not part of your assignment. And God, knowing your future, begins to clear the path even when you are still clinging to the past. Sometimes the removal is not just for your sake, but for theirs. God loves them too. He knows what you are about to walk into, the trials, the elevation, the exposure, and he spares them from a journey they are not equipped to survive. He severs connections, not because he's angry, but because he's accurate. Divine separation always serves a higher strategy, so before you rush to repair what's been broken, pause. Before you chase after those who walked away, wait, because the God who orders your steps also orders your separation. And what feels like a painful subtraction is often the beginning of divine addition. What leaves you was never meant to carry you where you are going. If God allowed it to leave, it no longer fits where he is taking you. In his wisdom, God subtracts, but in his love he protects, and though the separation may hurt, it is a hurt that heals. Trust that the one who gives also takes not to harm, but to make whole. Divine separation, though veiled in sorrow, is often the door through which our next blessing walks in. Many times we kneel in prayer asking God for clarity, for peace, for growth, and for guidance. We ask him to reveal the people who are truly for us. We beg for healing from the anxiety and confusion that certain relationships bring. And yet, when the answer comes not in words, but in departures, we call it a problem rather than a solution. We see someone walk out of our lives and interpret it as abandonment, rejection, or failure. But what if they're eggs? It is not a rejection of you, but a response to your prayer. God is not bound to answer us in the way we expect. His methods are higher than ours. His timing is precise, and his understanding is perfect. When you asked him to remove what was not sent by him, he didn't just take away visible enemies, he started peeling away hidden distractions, unstable loyalties, and connections that looked like blessings, but were slowly draining your soul. He heard the whisper of your midnight cries, and sometimes the person you thought you needed was the very weight God was lifting off your spirit. There are people we become so emotionally entangled with that we don't realize they're clouding our discernment. Their presence might be consistent, but their influence slowly misaligns our hearts. We begin to compromise. We overlook the red flags. We tolerate confusion, and we stay not because we're at peace, but because we fear the loneliness that might come if they left. Yet all the while, we are crying out for God to restore our joy, give us wisdom, and lead us into his will. So God, in his silent compassion, begins to unweave what we were too entangled in to escape ourselves. A departure often feels like a break, but in truth, it is a release. A soul tie is cut, a cycle is ended, a distraction is silenced. You didn't just lose someone, you were set free. And if you look closely, you'll notice something began shifting in your life after they left. Your thoughts became clearer, your spirit became lighter, your prayers started to flow again. That is not coincidence, that is deliverance. And it came wrapped in heartbreak, because the heart had become too attached to what the soul had outgrown. You may have asked God to reveal your purpose. You may have asked for greater strength, wisdom, or deeper intimacy with him, but none of those things can fully bloom in the soil of confusion, divided loyalty, or spiritual compromise. So instead of answering with thunder or miracles, he answered with separation. He answered by removing the ones who could no longer journey with you into the next chapter. It was his mercy in motion. It was his hand in the silence. It was his yes to your prayer delivered in the form of goodbye. And though you may not recognize it immediately, you will look back one day and thank him not just for what he gave, but for what he gently took away. There is a sacred misunderstanding that often creeps into our hearts when people disappear from our lives. we begin to wonder if it's our fault. We search for flaws in our personality, blame ourselves for not being enough, and assume that maybe God is displeased with us. But the truth lies far deeper. God does not orchestrate loss as a weapon. He orchestrates it as a tool, not to punish, but to purify. The refining process in Scripture is never gentle, but it is always holy. Just as gold must be purified through intense fire to remove the impurities buried within it, the soul must be purified through moments of loss, silence, and separation. God is not attacking you when He allows people to leave. He is refining the vessel that He intends to fill. He sees in you a deeper calling, a stronger voice, a greater purpose. But to prepare that version of you, certain connections must be burned away. Some people are tied to your old self. They know the weaker version of you. They connect with the insecure version of you. They are familiar with your wounds and maybe even attached to them. And so, when God begins the holy process of elevation, those people become incompatible with where He's taking you. If they stayed, they would hold you back, not always maliciously, sometimes just naturally. They are not meant to see the next version of you, because their presence would keep you stuck in the previous one. God is refining your discernment. He is sharpening your sense of peace. He is teaching you the strength of being alone with Him. When He removes people, He also reveals how deeply you depended on them for your identity, your worth, your stability. And in the refining fire, He breaks every idol, not to leave you broken, but to make you whole. When you lose people, you gain clarity. When you lose approval, you gain strength. When you lose comfort, you gain faith. Consider how the prophets were often set apart not as punishment, but as preparation. Moses was taken into the wilderness. Joseph was separated from his brothers. David was hidden in caves before he wore a crown. The refining always came before the revealing. So when you feel the sting of someone walking away, understand that heaven is not silent. Heaven is working, and it is removing what cannot survive the weight of your future. God does not cut to wound, He cuts to cleanse. He does not remove to break, He removes to build. And though it may feel like divine disapproval, it is divine preparation. The people who walk away are not being used to harm you. They are being used to shape you, because the man or woman God is forming in the secret place cannot emerge while clinging to every familiar hand. The fire is not your enemy, it is your furnace, and through it the refining begins. When two people vanish from your life in the same season, it is not a random occurrence. It is a sign not of relational instability, but of divine repositioning. In the unseen realm, movement is always spiritual before it becomes visible. When God is preparing to shift your spirit, realign your direction, or elevate your purpose, He begins by removing distractions, attachments, and soul ties that could interfere with His voice. 2 is a number of witness in the Bible. When something happens twice, it is a confirmation that it has been established by God. So when two people are removed from your circle, whether through betrayal, distance, or simply unexplained disconnection, it is a spiritual confirmation that heaven is speaking. You are not being abandoned, you are being rerouted, and the silence of those exits is louder than words if you learn to listen with your spirit. Every spiritual shift requires space, and that space must be cleared before it can be filled. You may have prayed for direction, for discernment, for new levels of wisdom or intimacy with God, but you cannot step into those new levels while clinging to relationships rooted in your old mindset. The moment you begin to grow spiritually, the room you once occupied becomes too small, and God allows two to walk away to signal that what is coming requires a new atmosphere. Sometimes those two people represent old seasons. One may have carried your past pain, the other may have fed your fears. Their presence was a mirror of where you were, not where you are going. If they remained, Their presence would echo memories that God is trying to erase. Their words would affirm patterns God is trying to break. Their expectations would bind you to identities God is trying to transform, and so he removes them, not out of cruelty, but out of covenant. This kind of divine shift often comes quietly. No announcement, no thunder, just two names slowly fading, two doors gently closing, two seats that remain empty. But in the emptiness there is a holiness. God is doing what you didn't have the strength to do. He's rearranging your environment so he can realign your soul. The removal may not make sense in the moment, but it always precedes revelation. When the dust settles, you begin to pray differently. You think differently. You listen with new ears. That is the evidence of a shift. The number 2 also signifies agreement. In spiritual terms, when 2 are removed, God may be breaking an agreement you didn't even know existed. A silent alliance that was hindering your growth. A subtle influence that was pulling you away from your assignment. He is not just subtracting people, he is canceling agreements in the spirit realm. Agreements of limitation, agreements of fear, agreements of compromise, and through their departure, God is declaring, "This one belongs to me, and I am setting them apart." Spiritual growth does not happen in comfort zones. It is not cultivated in crowded rooms filled with constant noise and familiar faces. It is forged in silence, in solitude, and in seasons of separation. When God desires to elevate you, he first isolates you. He strips away everything you lean on, so you are forced to lean on him. He takes away the voices that once guided you, so you can finally hear his voice clearly. This is not rejection, it is refinement. This is not loneliness, it is preparation for intimacy with the divine. Separation is a sacred space. In the Bible, those whom God used greatly were first separated from the crowd. Abraham was called away from his homeland. Moses was taken into the wilderness. Paul was struck blind and led into isolation before he ever preached a word. Separation is not a curse. It is a sign that God is getting ready to speak directly to your soul. He wants your full attention, and sometimes that means removing those who constantly occupy your thoughts, emotions, and energy. Every time you grow spiritually, the environment around you must change. You can't carry fresh revelation into old relationships that are built on outdated versions of who you used to be. As your spirit matures, it naturally creates tension with those who are not growing at the same pace. They begin to misunderstand you, pull away from you, or resist the changes they see in you. And while this may feel painful, it is actually a divine indicator that your spiritual roots are stretching deeper, and not everyone has the capacity to follow you there. God is not interested in your comfort. He is invested in your calling, and your calling cannot be fully realized while clinging to every connection. Some people were assigned to your past, not your future. They served a purpose for a season, but growth requires movement, and spiritual movement demands the shedding of emotional weight. The relationships that keep you lukewarm in your walk with God will be the first to be removed when you ask him to set you on fire for his will. Separation also reveals what's real. When you begin to seek God more earnestly, he exposes the hearts of those around you. Some will support your growth, while others will resent it. Some will celebrate your new hunger for truth, while others will try to pull you back into old patterns. The ones who disappear during this shift are not being taken from you, they are being revealed to you. And that revelation is God's mercy, keeping you from tying your soul to someone who cannot walk with you into the depths of your calling. Growth always costs something, and often that cost is the comfort of company, but it is in the solitude of separation where God begins to unveil the next dimension of who you truly are. The pain of losing people is temporary. The presence of God that comes afterward is eternal.